All right, so we're live. I'm nervous. I'm not going to lie, because this is what, we're going to attack the gun debate, the gun discussion, the gun topic, the control, all this kind of stuff. So we have Anthony and Jason here. We're not going to get into all of the backgrounds and things like that. Because that goes all into the things people read about. They don't care. So they don't want to know all that kind of stuff. But so one thing is just make sure, Jason's been here before, but just make sure when you talk, keep the mic pretty close. Because I try to set them so that, wake up. That way so we don't get a bunch of crossfeed. Right. So that way it's pretty localized. But so the goal of this is really to kind of pop up with a few potential real valid solutions, which will most likely be a lot of steps, because there is no blanket statement for everything. Because, for example, laws in Podunk, Texas aren't going to work in New York City. Right. Things of that nature. So we want to, I have a bunch of the stats and data. I'm going to get into that. I want to try to avoid, this is just so people watching as well, I want to try to avoid doing things like comparing this crime to that crime. And so we'll stay real focused on what it is, so we don't get into like the typical talking points, so it's not so politicized. So we'll be real with it and logical. Does that make sense? So we're all good, right? So people that are watching, they're going to wonder why you're in the middle. It's because you're big as shit. So you get the middle chair. So, we did a weight thing.
He really wanted to be underneath that jersey.
Well, there was a leg. You had to come.
No, he didn't.
So Anthony is not a Patriots fan. You played for the Steelers, right?
Correct.
2 years?
2 years.
2 years, yeah. I remember. So, now you got a little poison behind you. Or catch a little energy. Sorry, we'll bring a little gold in here, black and gold in here somewhere, but we'll find it for you. So I appreciate you guys joining me.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and Jason is a police officer.
Yes.
And this is his views, but you may cross over into some of the policies and such that are.
It may, yeah. There's if it comes up, talk about laws and policies that I'm aware of and how I understand them for sure. Yeah,
and Anthony, you are a gun fan.
Yes, I am.
and you have, in case your wife is watching, you have one.
10 total.
No. I'm kidding. So you are effectively a pro Second Amendment person. Is that fair to say?
Of course. I first moved out here. I'm from Mississippi, born and raised. Moved out here, and I wasn't all pro 2A and all that, but I wasn't against guns. I grew up hunting and everything else, but I moved out here and fell in love with the craftsmanship of all the Texas guns and all the history behind it, the American history of it. It's beautiful, and it's something I want to be a part of, and I want to bring my family through and see how it can help more than destroy.
Yeah, exactly. And so, and just to kind of hit it is that, so I'll do the news flash one, just in case you guys didn't see it. Is this morning, President Trump did sign, I don't know if I don't know how to categorize it. So we're just going to say law, right? Because I don't know if it's a law, if it's a, administration. I don't know what the executive order, I don't know exactly the title of it, but it was banning, not just bump stocks, but
modified triggers.
Yeah, anything that would modify a semi-automatic to mimic an automatic, right? So that was signed this morning.
Yeah.
I don't see any problem with that, because automatics have been illegal fully automatic weapons have been illegal for a long time in the U.S. Right.
I still think it's window dressing. I don't think it addresses the issues. It just, hey, there's all this public media attention to this right now because of the last incident, and look, I'm doing something.
Yeah,
and he has to make some type of show that he's doing something about it,
right?
And most likely people will, that time's gonna come around. He got to get the votes as well.
Well, let me ask you a question then. What, from the other side, anti-Trump or anti-whatever, what do you classify as doing something? Because if he did nothing, he's gonna get shit on.
Right.
He's trying to do, at least take a step, because people are right now. Whether it's the kids or adults, parents, educators, they want something done. So are we not giving him enough credit for taking a step?
Yeah. Well, you have to remember is after Vegas, one quick thing is he directed the Attorney General to investigate were bump stocks currently illegal, or did we have to write new law? So in Trump's defense, and with some of these things, I think that was appropriate. Hey, do we really need to write another piece of law, or is this really already illegal? I think that's fair. And then so I think they're saying it's not, which is why he signed that in today.
Right. I don't have a problem with it. I mean, I've fired weapons with bump stocks before. Takes a little bit of practice. It's not as easy as you think, but it's not, it's not something I think that's going to make a major effect on gun owners. I don't think it's I don't even know how many gun owners actually have bump stocks.
Can you explain to us regular people what a bump stock is?
It's a option. It's a stock that gives you the mimic of a fully automatic, using the gun's shot to bounce off your shoulder and come back. So pretty much you're just holding your finger in one place and letting the gun do the work for you.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
So
it's not just holding the trigger down and letting it fire. It's pretty much just giving you the able to just hold it and let the gun do all the work.
It's like if you take taking all the special terms out for anybody that's watching that's not knowledgeable of the terms. The part of the gun you put on your shoulder is effectively almost an extension of that with a spring.
Like you're saying.
So the recoil or the kickback of the gun goes into that spring and automatically thrusts it back forward. So you effectively hold your trigger finger static, and then it does all the work for you. So it doesn't go quite at the rate of a fully auto, but it gets, better than 50%. Yeah.
Now the whole situation with that is I actually own the binary firing trigger.
Yeah.
So you just pull it once, and when you let go of it, it pulls twice. So it's binary. So you pull once, fires, let go of it, it fires again. So if you pull it fast enough, it can mimic almost full auto. But it's some hiccups and gimmicks in it that you also got to have a fully set up to do it the correct way.
Yeah.
But like I said, I own one of those. That's almost a $350 trigger.
Yeah.
And I got it for just from my police. And I'm not saying people. I mean, the cost of it alone will scare people away from it. But if it's something that you own, like I own one and I don't use it for any type of bad thing. I go out to my friend's place and we shoot, have fun. It's cool to have something like that, but it's nothing against having something like that until now.
So is the issue fully and semi-automatic weapons? Is it just we need to make it harder to get them?
It's all of that. I think it's all of that. So I think the current laws we have on the books, when you don't get into the semantics, and please, argue with me on this, if you disagree, please. I think the current laws as written are actually pretty good. We just have a problem, I think, that's a larger problem in America of enforcing legislation and enforcing law because it's too open for interpretation. So what is an assault weapon? And that's one of the big things.
Scary looking gun.
And that's what, people are getting on to Trump is because they're like.
Everything they see in the movies.
Right.
Yeah, pretty much.
And it got down, if you remember, I think it was during Clinton as well, during Clinton's term, definitely during Obama's term, during President Bush's Jr.'s second term, a lot of that keep coming up. And it was getting to the point that if a rifle was black, it was assault.
Pretty much.
If it had a scope, it was assault weapon. And that's, I don't even know how to, personally, that's silly.
Yeah.
The color of the gun, if it's pink, green, blue, black, who cares? That doesn't make it an assault rifle.
Right. That's what you get when you have legislators who have no knowledge of firearms or background or training or anything start attempting to legislate the Second Amendment. You get ridiculous things like the color of the gun, or hey, it's kind of scary looking, it's got a pistol grip on it, so it must be more dangerous than one without, when it's not. It's just as dangerous. So that's what you get is when you have people uneducated start trying to use politics to push policy.
It happens on the news all the time. I think it was not too long ago when the news, I don't know which media was it, they put out a picture of a gun, like these how they automatically come when they got a grenade launcher.
It was USA Today, right? And they had like a chainsaw on the end of it. Like I was like,
all different types of attachments you can.
It was like a zombie apocalypse game. It was crazy.
And that's just your person that Google something like, oh, this right here looks scary.
Yeah.
And you're not
that was
giving
hilarious.
anybody with any type of knowledge with guns to come in and educate those type of people. Like, hey, this is what's going on. This is how they come standard, and they come one pull. That's it. anything else that modifies that, yeah, you can dig into those type of things and maybe make them higher. Why not make them like a suppressor? You know, it's already hard to get a suppressor. You know, because you go through a full, thorough background check on suppressors, and you know, if you want to own something like that, then cool, you're gonna make it that process, but don't try to strip it away from people that's doing the right thing.
Yeah, I think the issue is most people who are educated are pro Second Amendment because they understand weapons, they've educated themselves on it, so they're not anti Second Amendment, and that's not going to play into the agenda of people who are looking to restrict people's gun rights, in whatever level they're looking to restrict.
I hate using all the political terms, but I'm gonna play the left for a second, and a lot of them are kind of like, you know what, one death is one too many. Okay, I'm not saying no, because if that one death is your wife, spouse, child, brother, sister, mother, father, of course that's one too many, right? Mm-hmm. So yes, it is unrealistic, however, I think, to think we're going to live in a world that somebody isn't going to kill somebody with something. It's just simply going to happen. It happened long before guns. It's going to happen long after guns. That's the reality of it. So the one life is too many type argument, how can we apply that to this and say, let's take one step. If we're going to eliminate guns, we have to eliminate the Second Amendment, right? Right.
But even that's not going to eliminate guns.
Yeah,
so it's a reality.
Right. And the reality of that is it takes at least 38 states by popular vote to be able to change the amendment. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. But I don't. This whole situation is going to play back to the prohibition.
Right.
It's as simple as going to go right back to that.
I think it'll be worse. Like you try to take. I mean, are you kidding? You try to take 350 million firearms away from Americans? I mean, yes, the overwhelming majority of Americans will comply because that's we're conditioned to. Yeah. But you have a small minority, and that's not so small when you're talking about, maybe 1 million people or 500,000 people, maybe less, 20,000. We'll say 20,000 people who are not going to give them up. And you want to talk about like Ruby Ridge and Waco, things like that. Yeah. That's nothing compared to what would happen if you try some stuff like that.
You have to do it like this: is there's that many firearms, there's that many things. A lot of people who are pro Second Amendment think the Second Amendment is there precisely to stop the government from taking the firearms.
Yeah.
So how do you overcome that obstacle with pro-gun or pro-Second Amendment people? And I mean, I'm clearly, so everybody knows I'm more right than left. I'm Second Amendment, I'm pro-gun, I'm all those things. But the question, I mean, these are things we have to address. If you think of social media, how connected all the veterans and police and first responders and pro-gun people are with social media. Okay, if the government comes in and says, you know what, boom, we're just doing it. And we're not doing it by popular vote. We're not following the rules because that's likely the only way it's going to happen. It's time for you to turn your guns in. We as Congress have decided this is what's going to happen. That's exactly why the Second Amendment is there, is because they're trying to take our ability to keep them in check, which is the reason for the Second Amendment.
I'll go a step further as a police officer, as someone who represents a type of government. Good luck getting police officers and federal agents and military to enforce that. It will not happen. I'll tell you right now, it will not happen. It will be the opposite effect. And that's why that's for people who think that that's a possibility. That's beyond a dream. Like it's not.
Hearing that because for either side, it's all these crazy they'll spit something out and it's all this emotion, right?
Yes.
So what do they? Let's go left. I hate to do that, but what do they actually want? Because the guns are never going away. We all know that. Educated, logical people know the guns are never going away. If they do, at any level, you can still make them, right? You can buy the parts, you're going to
absolutely.
All of that's going to happen.
Yeah.
So, what have you guys heard? What do they actually want? This gun
so
they're demanding.
one quick interjection. When Jason says roughly 350 million firearms in the U.S., that's known firearms.
Yeah.
That's known firearms. It doesn't take a lot to cast something and to be able to build these things.
No.
It doesn't. So even if the government said, you know what, poof, and magically the wand comes down and every gun in America is gone that's known, it's just going to be a matter of a couple of weeks before everybody that wants one has one.
Yeah.
It really is. It's not that difficult. It's not that difficult to refurbish those things. So I think the left and you guys put your brains there as well. I think they just want people to stop dying by gun. It's violent. It's out of their control. It's very emotional. I get it. It's murder. I think I'm going to project and say I think the left feels the same way about somebody getting stabbed. I think they feel the same way about somebody getting run over. Or, when they got mowed down and
It's not. That's not about the truck situation.
Yeah.
It's not. Before guns, people got killed by knives. Before before knives is everything else. You got crossbows and everything else. It's eventually everything's going to evolve until it turns into one thing. So you didn't stop it then. It's going to be hardest. I don't know if you cuss in here now. Okay.
Yeah.
Hard as hell to try to stop. Stop guns now. I don't know what the solution is, but for a person that's pro 2A, I understand the outcries and stuff like that, but the guns are not the problem. People are the problem. People with mental issues. People with the whole situation, the thing in Florida. The FBI missed the whole thing that he had an issue. He had a mental issue. He already stated that he was going to do something a while back, and they didn't check into that. And
well, let me ask you, because you're in law enforcement, and we've dealt with a lot of legal stuff. So, knowing, for the most part, I could say I'm going to do something to you until I act on it.
You're right. No, you're absolutely right. This is I'm almost sympathetic to the FBI a little bit on this, because what's happening is this incident occurred, and now it's being dissected. So every little thing that's popping up looks gigantic. But I promise you, for that one time that somebody reported this guy wanted to go shoot a school, there's probably 100 or 1,000 others that they received. I used to be a school resource officer when I first started my civilian law enforcement career. We'd get these, not all the time, but consistent. Yeah. And it's something that officers would look into. We'd go look into, talk to their parents, usually get cooperation. And 99% of the time, it was always someone acting out, saying things provocatively, trying to get attention, whatever it is, which is what it is most of the time. So I'm a little sympathetic to the FBI. This guy, I don't believe, was diagnosed with any mental. He clearly has some mental health issues, but he wasn't actually diagnosed. Correct. If I'm correct on that.
On some sort of medication.
okay.
He was on something. I may screw this up. I'm going to classify it. He was on very stereotypical ADD, ADHD type medication,
which is common.
Which is, if that's the classification for not having good mental health,
that'd be a lot of people.
We're screwed. Yeah. So I don't think, because I know state level and I know some local level things as far as law, I don't think even him stating that would get the FBI the ability to actually interrogate him. They definitely wouldn't get a warrant.
Well, they can go talk to him.
Right. They can go talk to anybody.
But again, if you've got but if you got how many complaints, and you got to look at the workload of those agents. What's the priority scale on this versus other things that they're receiving? It's you've got to prioritize it. And I know it sounds terrible now because the guy went out and did it, but there's no way to predict it. Right.
What's the history on when did he purchase a gun? When he said it, like I said, so if he said it at a certain point in time and he had a gun prior to that, then that should have elevated the situation.
Right.
And his guns were purchased legally.
Yes. Everything was everything that he had was
19
legal.
years old. At 18, you can buy your own rifle, gun, or anything like that.
Yeah. So the argument, of course, is people are legally getting these quote assault rifles, whatever. The argument of a lot of these people is, what do you even need them for? So for somebody that has many guns, different kinds of guns, you put your guns together. For someone's going to come up to me and go, what do you even need that for?
Correct.
What is your response?
That's for my own. I have my own right to bear as many guns as I want. It's a true American right to own those guns. It's something I got into. It's just like people own a whole bunch of pair of sneakers. Why do you need that many pair of sneakers?
And they're going to say, well, sneakers don't kill anybody.
It's true.
Okay, what about?
Right.
People own a whole bunch of cars. Cars kill people every day. So we can argue. It's in the wrong hands. You know what I'm saying? I own a lot of guns, and it's not an issue for me. I don't have any vendetta with anybody else that owns a lot of guns, or if they don't own guns at all. I feel like it's my right to protect the person to the right of me or to the left of me if they don't have that situation comes along.
So what do you think, though, as a parent? I know your girlfriend has a son, correct?
Yeah.
You have children.
Correct.
We obviously have children. So this is a very real conversation.
Yeah.
You know, there's a lockdown at your kid's school, blah, blah, blah. Now thinking as a parent, what can be done? What are the steps to take?
I think a step is and I'm going to modify this slightly because I was very firm and then I heard something a couple hours ago. I think you have to leave it at local level, one. And local level means school level. I mean, the elementary next door to junior high may have different input and things. So I think this is just my quick introduction on how do we do things right this second, because legislation is going to take years.
Right.
It's going to take a long time. So what can we do right now to be able to do this? I think a federal mandate that every school at a local level is required a minimum level of security. They can define that, but there has to be some minimum level. And I think a lot of schools now have firewalls to protect them against fires and things like that. So at those firewalls, put automatic doors that will release and close.
What do you think of the proposals where they're suggesting allowing teachers to get trained to carry firearms who volunteer to?
Again, I think that's local. If a teacher is willing to and they want to and they're going to go through that training for it, by all means, yes. You know, I would like to say every principal, vice principal, you know, front office, because that's where most of the people are going to come through. They should all have it and be required. And there's some people who are just like, you know what, I agree, we need armed guards, but that's not me. So I don't want to put a deal to where you're forcing people into that situation. So I mean,
you're inviting conflict with those.
Right.
When you bring you put a guy there that's armed guards and everything else, you're inviting conflict. Somebody's going to test that some way somehow. But somebody running in there and use a teacher and you just sitting there in the classroom, you see somebody walk in with a gun, he doesn't think that you have a gun, but you know yourself, I have a whatever sitting right here under my desk, and I'm willing to use it to protect my kids.
But how would that change the mentality of, in my opinion, a lot of these shooters look for very soft targets. So school is considered a very soft target, right? Typically, because you have children, you have teachers. It's a gun-free zone, which we all know those terrible ideas. Well, I think, in my opinion, and so they're coming into a soft target. But if you change the mindset of, well, now randomly there's teachers concealed carrying weapons, now it's not such a soft target anymore, right? And so how does that change the dynamic of someone thinking about shooting up a school? Because most of these guys who shoot up schools, typically they don't want to be confronted by law enforcement. And once they are, they usually give up or they go commit suicide is what seems to happen a lot of times. So I just wonder how that would change the dynamic a little bit.
I think to some level, treat it like airplanes. You don't know where the marshals are. You don't know who has them, who doesn't. You just know
absolutely.
that they're there.
Yeah.
You know somebody
do not
got 'em.
advertise.
And it's a situation that the cost of it, the cost of training, the time of training, the cost of the firearms, all those things are so minimal in the grand scopes of things that, I mean, why not?
Yeah.
It's a deterrent. And if an assailant knows there are absolutely somebody more
they
likely
don't
more
know
than
who
one,
it is.
They don't know who is in there ready to defend that school. Crap.
I think it might change a little bit. I think you look at a lot of these active shooter scenarios where they've taken a target they consider safe for them to assault.
Right.
You know, like Las Vegas. Like, could you get any more? You know, you're how far away from an elevated platform, shooting multiple into a crowd. I mean, he picked as almost the same as you could get. And so on. You know, the theater shootings like in Colorado. Those are soft. They seem like very soft targets where they just have free range to get out whatever it is, their anger issues and mental health issues on those people, and without being confronted before they kind of achieve what they want to achieve.
And so I'm talking to schools, and I'm going to call it a school invasion. I'm going to do that to where they actually breach the perimeter of the school. They're in the building and they're walking around freely firing. One thing, I got a lot of messages and emails from a lot of people from the left. Had a hard time getting them on the show, but a lot of messages from them. Yes, if we specifically secured that building, then what stops them from pep rallies, school events, football games, baseball games, basketball games, to where there's a massive congregation and security is, even though they know they may get shot, they've got 1,000, 2,000, of the student body right there that they can just go.
I don't know. I think when I worked schools and where we these events are a big deal, like all these pep rallies and stuff. We always had extra security. Like
Yeah.
at football games, you have a ton of security and cops out there working the football games, stuff like that. There's like a lot of security, and I
Yes.
think that's why you don't hear about those events kind of getting messed with. But the school, even though we have school resource officers here in Texas, and I know some other states have them too. They just see, and maybe we haven't had a lot of school shootings here in Texas as far as mass shootings, but it just seems like the schools where you don't have that, it's just different. They have,
And I
say,
agree.
free reign.
That was one of those I want to bring up.
Yeah.
That's some of the chatter that's going on.
Speak to this, again, memes get put out or people put out statistics that one person says it, it's immediately statistic.
Right.
Yeah.
So many, school shootings this year, which is we're learning is false. All kinds of things people put
Right.
out, everyone just jumps behind it, right? So speak to this, gun-free zones, stricter places with stricter gun laws. They'll say, well, this country, and this country don't have this problem. They have stricter gun laws, blah, blah, blah.
Right. And if you go true per capita, okay, and so per capita is very important because we have a very large population with probably the largest range of demographics of any country in the world. Not the largest population, but the range of demographics. Like I kind of said earlier, you go Brownsville, Texas to New York City. Okay,
Right.
there's two, You go to a tiny town in the middle of Ohio, same thing. The demographics are insane. Per capita, for mass shootings, we're number 12 in the world. Okay, and that's as of last year. This year isn't. So to 12 months ago, because obviously the FBI and all the places aren't going to get all of their data out right now. So all this data is roughly 12 months old. If that makes sense. So we were number 12 as far as deaths by shooting and mass shootings. We're number 11 in the world, and these are all not third world countries, so all developed countries, industrialized countries, and that's not numbers. We do have, I think we're number 2 as far as the actual number of deaths, but when you break that down to deaths per million and deaths per 100,000 and things that per capita, which is very important, we're number 11 and 12 on those
Right.
respectively. Okay, could we be better? Yes, of course we can be better. And then mass shooting is defined as, I think it's defined as 8 people have to be killed or wounded or more, and then they're all over the age of 13. It's how they do it globally. So when you say, well, what about kids under 13? We don't have the data. It doesn't exist.
Wow.
And anybody who says that it exists, it doesn't. They're just going to pull this and pull that, and so it's not real numbers. It's not real data.
Yeah.
Do you guys believe in? I believe in the belief of we're a free country, right?
Yeah.
And with freedom comes great responsibility. We've always said so. If we have the right to have these guns, of course, you act responsibly with yours. We act responsibly with ours. Do you believe in that statement? With freedom comes great responsibility. And do you think that us as a country and our culture and the way we're raising our children, are we teaching them that responsibility? Responsibility with firearms, responsibility with human life, responsibility with respect to each other? Do you think
no.
we're training?
I disagree. I think if you look, like our, excuse me. I think if you look at, like, you talk about stats, you talk about violent crimes been coming down for a long time now on a regular, pretty. We're definitely making progress in violent crime, those types of crimes that occur. So I think social media is kind of a double-edged sword.
Yeah.
I think a positive of social media, honestly, is in a way it's brings more connectivity to people from all over. It makes them feel more connected to each other.
Right.
Where you don't feel like you're isolated in your little groups and things that happen over there happen over there. Instead, things like this incident in Florida, now everybody feels it. And everybody's expressing condolences. Everybody's communicating on social media about how it makes them feel. I feel as though we have issues. Every generation has their issues. But I actually kind of think that I think people are becoming more conscious of life and how precious it is in a lot of ways, in my opinion. I think people are definitely more feeling towards more empathetic towards other people through this connection. That's what I feel, and I feel like I see. I feel like I've become more empathetic through social media use and connecting
But
through
do you feel
people.
like we talk generational thing. 30 and over.
Yeah.
I feel like we do. However, also see a lot of parents not have a connection with their children. And when children lack that attention from parents, whatever, even though it may be a negative, like, you know, I don't know how many of you guys, I was spanked as a child, right? You know, it's so funny how all the people our age are like, oh, kids now, they're so just fucking disrespectful because they don't get spanked, they don't whatever. Because we knew.
Yeah.
We freaking knew.
Yeah.
Moms and not all, there's a percentage, right, that are like, oh, just go watch your tablet. Oh, just go.
Yeah, yeah.
So they're left to deal with whatever they see on YouTube, whatever their friends are saying, whatever they're learning at the kids club at the gym. You see what I mean? Yeah. And so I think that when we talk about, you know, what's the problem? Guns aren't the problem. I think it's a raising your kid problem. Right?
So
Kids are assholes.
Two things with that. I think any of our Bill of Rights amendments, any of our rights we can abuse as a society. Right. And those we can legislate to restrict some of those rights to some level. Just like with the First Amendment, you can't go into a plane and yell bomb because some couple of jackasses did it. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So we can, as a society, one or two people can really screw it for everybody else. Now, why would you ever want to run on a plane and yell bomb anyway? Right? Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. So some people are like, well, we can legislate against our amendments. We can restrict. We don't have full freedom of speech. There's things that we can and can't say that are illegal. True. Most, if not all of those things, no reasonable logic person would ever say them anyway.
Right.
Well,
right.
I grew up like I grew up freedom to a certain extent. That's how I grew up. African American is different than a lot of different cultures and everything else. And like I said, I grew up with my grandfather. He was a strong-handed person. Law was law. You follow the law. You understand. You listen to the police officer. So he's there to protect you. He's also you mind your parents, you mind your grandparents. You listen to your elders, and it's the way I grew up was very stern, and I turned out to be just fine. I was a straight and narrow. Sometimes it does have a lot of things to do with what's going on in the world, but it also starts at home. And I feel like that's one of the biggest things is that you got the home has to be in a certain type of sway.
But are we learning that though with these mass shootings or really, kids, especially adolescents who are in a lot of trouble? There's problems in the home.
Correct.
Yeah,
right?
I agree. But I think that's the
They're
case.
not getting enough attention at home and stuff like that.
I think that's the case in general. Like I can tell you from our customers that a lot of them are, if you ask questions, you find out very quickly they have severe home issues. One parent homes, mom or dad's not there. They're out running the streets at night. I mean, I think a lot of our issues go back to parenting in the home or lack of it. I think that's a big issue. But it's almost like a side issue for this. I think this, like what we're talking about here, what's kind of spurred a lot of this debate is one thing that's finally it's starting to get talked about a little bit. I'm hearing it is the mental health aspect.
Yeah.
Like there's a serious problem with these shootings and people with mental health problems.
Right.
And I think it's finally getting a little play, but that's where I think a big problem is.
Coming up tremendously, I'm going to say since Columbine.
Yeah.
I think that's where it really
there are
kicked.
issues, for sure.
So let's take that because that's one of the potential solutions is everybody that's going to get a firearm or have a concealed license and things of that nature has to go through and be rated in good mental health. Okay, so the reality, and this is real because I'm not against that, but who gets to define good mental health? Right. And then is it a matter of you're a buddy of mine and you're a psychologist or a psychiatrist and I'm like, hey man, just sign this. Cool. Done. So how does that, where is the systems of checks and measures? What if, do they label PTSD? Because then I'm screwed.
Yeah.
And I'm probably one of the first people you want with a firearm in a bad situation. I bet you that's
the first thing that you would say to, the political spectrum of the left would go after.
Yeah.
Because they seem to have, I hate to generalize, but there seems to be an issue with veterans and PTSD with the left. I don't know what it is.
So, right. So let's say, and literally, and I'm self-glorifying myself with that, but I'm a marksman at every possible weapon you can come up with. And I've been in about every situation you could. I'm really, if shit hits the fan and you have a firearm, give it to me. You probably have a better chance.
Right.
But I would probably be one of the first people that would be ineligible to have a firearm. So if that's the case, do I get due process? Am I afforded my other constitutional rights? Then who has to pay for those?
Or
do I
you
have to
back
pay
it
for all
off
that?
and just make it like I think that's like if that's a possibility that it gets so bogged down in bureaucracy where now you've got to go to a shrink and get approval to have a
Right.
firearm. That would be
But
that'd
then
be
it
crazy.
plays into this whole thing of like with kids when underage drinking, they're gonna find a way to get it.
Right.
Oh yeah,
Always.
always.
Like
Always.
I said before, I mean, I hate to be like, there's no answer, but viable answers.
Yeah.
I'm not
And
seeing.
a lot of times you hear common sense. Okay, I'm just going to focus on just mental health. Your common sense mental health. This person's on X number of medications and they've been in and out of psych wards and all of this stuff. So we're like, okay, yes,
Yeah.
they're crazy.
Yeah.
Okay, write that down in a definition for me.
Uh,
That can be followed by law and can be a blanket statement for the whole country.
it would take. I think it would
You're not
definitely
gonna
take
catch all of 'em.
classification.
You're not gonna get every single one of them. As much as you want to, you're not gonna get every single one of them that has mental issues. But you can get the majority of them that has real issues that you need to be paying attention to.
Yeah. So should that be like a reporting thing?
I think you could classify. So, like in law enforcement, we deal with people with mental health issues a lot. Like that's one of those things that people don't realize, but we deal with that a lot. And so they've gone to the point of it used to be have no training in it.
Yeah.
Now we have a lot. Well, I wouldn't say a lot, but we have enough training in it that we're able to look at somebody on the street and we have tools we can use to help deal with those people. But they classify all the different behaviors from, whatever the behavior is. They have a classification for it from personality disorders, bipolar disorders, paranoid schizophrenics. There are ways I think you can classify certain diagnosed behavior
Yes.
and say, okay, these guys with this diagnosed behavior should not be allowed to have a firearm. It should be a law that they're not responsible enough to own a firearm.
Yeah.
I think it can be done. I really do.
Yes. And because I think it can be, but I think it's a wiggly wire.
Yeah.
So if you say if someone is diagnosed bipolar manic and they're given medication for it, that is somebody that is very likely shouldn't have a firearm.
Right.
And then do you say, okay, well, no firearm? Are they allowed to have a handgun for self-defense? Or what is there? Does that make sense? Like you gotta start asking those questions like, well, what's the level of their bipolarism? Because I know some people that are bipolar that are great. They don't have a problem. And I know some that are, I wouldn't let them open my window.
Yeah.
I mean, literally, and that's the spectrum.
Yeah,
So
you're right.
It gets for me. It gets weird because I look at it and I say, okay, yes, I think someone who's mentally unstable should not have a firearm. I agree 100%. I just don't know how to define that and looking at it from an enforcement side and a legislative side. I don't know how to do that. Who defines it? Who enforces it? Where's the due process? Because with the no-fly list, we had congressmen and women get put on the no-fly list, and they can't get off. And now obviously there's ways around it for them. But I'm just saying, so we know people are going to be wrongfully put on this list and be banned. So now who carries the burden to be able to swing that out? Who to correct it?
I don't feel like I have the expertise to decide, what it would be. It
Right.
would take people with that expertise and, hopefully that I do think that's coming, by the way. I do think you're going to see significant legislation when it comes to mental health issues and people owning firearms. I think that's definitely coming. With right now, I feel like it's over too.
Yeah. So let's take it one step back. Is it safe to say, and I know a lot of the liberals won't like me saying this, but is it safe to say the Second Amendment is not going away?
Oh, it's very safe to say.
Okay. So if we take that completely off the plate, okay, so now we're looking at the raw situation. One thing, are you increasing the age to be able to purchase a firearm beneficial or not?
I think it'd be beneficial. I don't have a problem
From
with
18
that.
it'd be 18 to 21.
It just makes sense to me.
Yeah. Currently, you
So
can't get it
telling somebody that
concealed.
can go serve their country, they can't own a gun.
See that, and that's
Well-
I think because that was my first thing when I heard it, is I was like, and I think this goes for alcohol and everything else as well. Are you an adult at 18 or are you adult at 21? Because if you can go and you can fight and serve our country, you should effectively that person should be given a waiver.
Yeah.
Right? And that's just military. Everybody has a waiver for everything. But if you're going to be able to go serve, the second you swear your oath and you're going off and you are now a serviceman or woman, you're an adult and you can drink, you can buy a firearm, you can do all these things. I think there should be a waiver for that. But I'm cool with regular civilians making it 21. Kind of. Because what if I want to take my son hunting? Because I'm very seriously considering, especially as a side thing, watching a lot of stuff with Rogan, a lot of people he has on, that he goes hunting once or twice a year, and that's his meat for the year. I'm really considering that. So what if I want to take my son and he's not 21?
Well, would there be exceptions for, as an adult, supervising your child, right? And
You'd have to,
under
right?
supervision, they'd be allowed to work farms?
I mean, I think there should be some level of, again, waiver, something like that.
Yeah.
But I mean, you 21 to buy a firearm?
Well, it even, I don't know. It doesn't really solve. I don't think it solves a problem. It's still because these guys, if a 16, 17-year-old wants to get a firearm, they get it.
And if
so
mom,
you
dad,
change
uncle, brother has one,
that's where they get it a lot of times, right? Some of these cases, they've gotten it from family members.
If they want to do harm, they're going to do harm.
Yeah.
Right.
There's no fix.
Do you think that's what people are missing?
Yeah.
Because it's very raw. It's very emotional right now. So the first instinct is it's the quote the gun's fault.
Right.
It's your fault. We don't need these stupid firearms. Why are they even available? Blah blah blah. Killing all these people, right? But as you're saying, when it was knives, when it was crossbows, when it was freaking a stapler, whatever.
Yeah.
If the person inherently wants to harm you, they're going to harm you. And if they're crazy enough to go into any movie theater, school, mind you, with children, and shoot that place up, there's serious issues.
Yeah.
And so I think that's part of the problem. That we talk about the positives and negatives of social media. We are addressing some of these things, but there's the bright shining light right here, and we're missing the actual problem, right? I mean,
in the deal, so let's take some of the things that have been put out, right? So high capacity mags. To me, it's irrelevant.
Yeah.
Because make them all illegal. Anything over 10, make anything over 5 illegal. Whatever. To me, I say that whatever, roll my eyes because it's irrelevant.
It didn't work in California, San Bernardino.
Right.
They got all the bans on their high capacity mags, all those things. California's got some crazily strict gun laws.
Yeah.
And that didn't change nothing. They got what they wanted, and they went to they did a lot of damage. I mean, that was.
And so that's one that I'm just kind of like, it's a pretty ribbon.
is that thing though, the other side, the opposing side, just unrealistically just wants to get rid of the guns. They just want them gone, and they're like, well, let's start with all the scary ones, and then that'll solve the problem. And you're like,
yeah.
Well, we're still gonna get them.
Well, the gun doesn't matter. Like, it doesn't matter what gun you're using. I mean, Virginia Tech, the guy had, I think it was 2 HKs.
Yeah.
He wasn't using a rifle, and I think he killed 37 people and wounded like 50 or something. I don't know, but the gun itself is not the problem. It's the person behind the gun, and that's where I think that's where we have to focus how to deal with it. I think I saw another person who was a victim. His son was shot, I think, at in the Colorado shooting. This parent's been pushing real hard about not giving airplay to the names and faces of the shooters. Like, to take that off the table, to stop giving them notoriety, because it seems as though there are studies that are showing that notoriety plays into other shooters wanting to get the same type of notoriety that's got. So that's another.
The copycat.
You want the attention as well, just like they got. You already been thinking about it, but you just now this right here just motivate you to do whatever harm you want to do.
Right. And now look at this guy. He's all over TV every day, with this. And he's all over TV every day. His name's being said every day. It's on every Instagram, Facebook feed, and he's getting this play. And somebody else who's not mentally right will look at this, I think, and think, man, that's how people will get to notice me and hear my anger, my frustrations. And I think that's another possible avenue of working on just taking that out of the play. Like, stop giving these. There should not be allowed to give them airplay.
And this is part, because I agree with you. And then some of the counter to that is anytime that there is a mass shooting, people our general population is demanding to know who did it. Right. Was it a minority? Was it a white guy? Was it a black guy? Was it a Muslim? Was it a this? Was it a that? It's like, how old were they? None of that stuff
matters.
It really doesn't.
It doesn't matter who did it. It's all about the mental state of that person. Why did he do it? Why did he want to go out and harm 30, 40, 50 people, or go to a school and shoot it up, or go to a theater and shoot it up? Why is that? Why that's the real that's the real question that need to be asked instead of what color was he in, or was he black, was he white, was he Hispanic, was he anything?
Right.
So,
and I agree. So I mean, and this the deal is I don't want to, because we're three guys and a lady all on the same side of this.
Right.
Does that make sense? And so I don't want to get up here and just preach second A. I don't want to do that. I want to understand and try to address a lot of what the left is saying, and that they're real firm on, in today's world, right? In today's world of our country and the status of our country, no one needs an assault rifle. And we know when we say assault rifle, I'm going to say I think they mean anything that has a magazine, anything over a 3-round capacity.
Right.
Does that make sense? I'm going to classify that. I don't know that that's accurate, but I think it's safe to say. Okay. So they're saying, why does any American or civilian need this type of military grade weapon? Because I hear that a lot too. I'm going to change that. And so what's the answer to them?
You're still going against your 2A, because like I said, if you give me a 3-round, but your military has 10 or has 20, 30, 40 rounds, that's not a fair advantage for me.
Right.
Like I said, if they decide tomorrow that they want to do these type of things, I'm at a disadvantage from the beginning.
So you're going right back to the Second Amendment and saying, you know what, the reason for the Second Amendment is to keep our government in check.
Correct.
Yeah.
That we need effectively a well-trained civilian militia to be able to keep them in check. Because I agree with that.
Right. Well, I think the left likes to define it and saying, well, that was only for a militia,
right?
When it was needed to deal with bandits, or maybe the redcoats coming, whatever. They looked at it. They're saying that's outdated.
Yeah.
Like, that there's no longer necessary. In fact, I heard the argument today. Well, we have a very strong military. We have police. There's no need for people to have firearms. Like, it's not a necessary right anymore, and we've outgrown it. Is
right.
What their
and
argument
a lot
is.
of it, you'll hear founding fathers never could have foreseen the types of weapons we have today. I've heard that a lot.
What about the unknown threat?
Right.
So, U.S. is at war with each other about the guns.
Yeah.
Something really pops off, and now we really are at war with each other. What stops another country from trying to persuade one side to take over the U.S. or something they want to invade as well? Why are we going at each other's throats? How do I protect myself in that situation?
And only to reference, because I don't want to get into that discussion, we know from the indictments of last week that there were a lot of Russians that did attempt to affect the election. How they wanted to, we don't know, because they were on both sides of it, playing both sides of it. So really, you could just say they're trying to create discourse in America. But so there is a true valid threat to some degree externally outside of our borders to affect the way we live our lives here.
Yeah. Just look at the situation since the 45 has been elected. The world is more diverse than it has been in a long time.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Just painting it out there clear as blue. It's a lot of this color versus that color nowadays.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And you see it on social media. It's more eye opening because it's on social media.
Yeah. And it is, and that's I'm gonna plug in the gun stuff on that. The gun ownership, just to put this out there, between whites and non-whites and all those things, almost fit exactly to the population demographic percentages, which I thought was kind of crazy. But
I don't know. I think it makes sense. Americans are Americans.
Yeah.
We all have we have different cultures, different backgrounds, but we all, believe it or not, I think mostly look at ourselves as Americans, and we have similar American values, different based on cultures, but we're still got similar American values: freedom, liberty, the right to protect yourself, the right to pursue life as that provides you whatever level of happiness you're seeking. And I think we all share that. And I think that's even immigrants coming here, and I don't want to get into the illegal debate, but that's what people are really looking for, a place where they can achieve those things. Yeah. And I think we have that in common. So that's why you see, when you break it down by statistic with firearms, you're seeing, consistency there.
Yeah.
Is what I think.
And this is what because there's some things, I print all these things out on the backside, potential solutions to some of these things. Some of it is increased training if you're going to purchase a firearm. Mm-hmm. You have to be trained with the firearm and some level of proficiency with it, greater than what our LTC and CHLs were, because those are silly, but at least something, right? Something
Right.
in there. And then recurring training on those deals, like once every 2 years or whatever, something along those lines. You've got to go through some sort of refresher course. And then another one in conjunction with that is that anyone who owns a firearm has to carry insurance.
Well, but then you get into see, I think the issue you're going to have with that is now you have to start registering your firearms. And I
Yes.
think you're going to have a great deal of pushback on that because most pro-Second Amendment people look at registration as the first step to confiscation. Because that's what's happened in other
And now,
countries.
this is a lot of it is another question, again, taking left side. When you go through your background check to purchase a firearm, are you not effectively stating you now have a firearm?
You are effectively stating you purchased a firearm.
Right.
And that doesn't mean that firearm has a history of starting with you.
Yes.
Right, but what happens to it after that? There's no requirement that if I sell you guys a firearm, which we are totally allowed to do legally, I don't have to send the government a list of your name and date of birth and address saying I sold this firearm to
So
this person.
should you?
Right,
Right, and that's a real question. Is that should you have to do that?
I don't know. I'm mixed on that. I see the benefits of it being able to track firearms where they are, but then the part that I mean, maybe this is the Texan in me.
Yeah.
The part where I don't like the government being that involved in knowledge of what I own. Like I don't like it. It makes me uncomfortable. And you know, maybe that's just that American Texan in me that's like, hey, get out of my life. And
I see both sides of it. Because one side I'm kind of like, I'm never gonna do anything stupid with mine. Sure, great.
Right.
So I don't care, you know, and that great. It tags that ownership to me, so it makes it easier if it gets stolen or anything like that. Great, sure, I'm good with it. Or if it gets stolen, something happens. You know, there's an argument that says that it makes sense to let the government know to some level what you have and what the serial numbers are, and then there's also the other one that you're stating, which makes perfect sense as well. Part of the reason we have it is to keep the government in check. So why do we want to give the government
an extra step
on us?
and listen, it's not completely unrealistic that your government will turn on you. They've done it before.
We've seen it globally a lot in the last few years.
And so to assume that, hey, we have this benevolent government, guys, we know we don't have a benevolent government. We have a pretty well-working government that, with our checks and balances and our Bill of Rights in place, kind of keeps our government somewhat in check. It's been eroded a lot. But make no mistake, if you pay attention to these politicians, there's several of them, if they were in the ability to rule in a more authoritarian manner, but yes, they would absolutely try to take steps to take your gun without your...
Anthony, is it safe to say that there's an increased risk of the worst case saying civil war, but the smaller cases is saying lots of pockets of military style conflict with each presidential election that's going based on what happened on this one? You follow me? It's like, 'cause there was a lot of violence, not necessarily because Trump was elected.
Yeah.
Although I think that was a catalyst to a lot of it, because a lot of people fear.
They had their views of Trump, and that's just everybody's entitled to their own option of it. And until this last situation with the bump stocks, everything was always okay with him. You know, I understood his political views, and I understood where he wanted to take America. And I understand that.
Yeah.
You know, because right now it needs to be in a better place than what it was.
Right. And so now let's say whatever Trump goes through his first term, and then there's because if he's running again, it's going to be volatile.
Yep.
I mean, let's be real. That's part of who he is. That's how he does it. It's been successful for him for 30-something years. So he's going to do that. So let's say we get a fiery Democrat now and a fiery independent because everybody's screaming for a third party. They don't like the two-party system. So now we've got a three-way division in our country. To me, it's very logical and reasonable to say there's going to be a high likelihood of increased violence on our next presidential election because of that.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like there would be.
And then if that's real, why are we going to start turning our firearms over?
Yeah.
Now, the liberal side, the left side is going to say, well, that's the perfect reason to turn them over. But then the logical question, let's say yes, you're right, left, you're right. The logical thing is to do that. Who's going to give their firearm up first? Right? And then how do we, because we don't know, how do we track all the ones that have been turned in? How do we keep people from making more? How do we enforce all of these? Does that make sense?
You're not.
So
It's just not possible.
how do
People
we?
always find a way. I mean, so like I said,
That's right.
They're always going to find a way. It's just the same way. Same thing goes back to the California and the 10-round magazine. I'm seeing people manufacture and make a certain setup where now it's just easy as loading it into the chamber and you load a whole new clip.
Yeah.
Within 5 seconds, you don't even have to drop the mag or anything. You just put it into the chamber. And you load it and it's the less step you try. You can ban one thing or stop one thing. Or people always gonna find a different way to do it.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing goes for people with mental issues or anything of that such. You try to stop it. You're gonna stop them. You need to stop. You need to do it forcefully, or if you're gonna stop them, there's really not a way to try to stop them.
Yeah. So let's go back and let's really try to hit because we'll come up on time stop soon, but potential solutions. So one thing in 1996, Congress had passed legislation that did not allow any federal dollars to go towards the research or advancement of any potential gun control. Should that be lifted?
So what? I don't understand how that law
that
works. So that you can't research.
Yeah, the federal
think tanks aren't allowed to research
the
options for gun
federal
control.
government specifically. So now any independent person can.
Federal government can't fund research for
fund research for it.
it. I don't even know what that would do either way. I mean, people who you have think tanks working anyway, they're getting paid for by independent donors, probably working on that regardless. So I don't even know what that would. I think that seems like a pretty silly legislative act. I'm not sure what the purpose of that really was, other than to make it sound good, maybe.
Yeah, because they did it. So now federal dollars can't be spent to do, just like federal dollars can't be spent on certain stem cells.
Yeah,
federal dollars can't be on this. And so I don't know that overturning that would do anything. I'm exploring, man.
Yeah.
I mean, I'll just say
it's gonna take years of exploring.
Yeah, and I'm gonna because I know my brain's going, so I'm gonna flip this because there's some of them there. But it's I mean a lot of it. So the psychological screenings, waiting periods. My problem with waiting periods is there's not a bunch, not a ton, but there's whatever. I'll just say around 10 instances over the last few years that women in states with waiting periods had what we'll call an imminent threat, went to register, and during the waiting period got assaulted, raped, or killed.
Yeah.
So I'm like, okay, well, if someone's coming in with an imminent threat and they're a female, or let's take Steph, 100 pounds, soaking wet, and there's an aggressor, let's say I'm the typical aggressor on that, what's she going to do?
Yeah.
Right? Get a knife, get a bat, please.
Yeah,
that'll
exactly.
be fun.
Yeah.
The only viable way for her to defend herself is a firearm.
Right.
Police aren't going to get there in time.
Nope.
Neighbors aren't going to get there in time. Nobody's going to be able to do anything.
Nope.
And God forbid that person have children. So now there's multiple lives in danger because there's a waiting period. And so we've already established that the guns aren't going away. Firearms are of any level, handguns to right. I mean, they're not going to go away.
Right.
So I think waiting periods are unrealistic to some degree.
Right.
Mental health screenings.
Some type of mental health issue. Some type of. I really believe. I am very strongly for some type of mental health screening, documentation, something that I hate to do this because something that the part of the background checks has available to it. The FBI conducting background checks. Yeah. That there's a mental health reporting system for firearms checks. There's got to be something put in place.
Yes, a reporting system. Yes, that should be plugged in.
How far do you go back with the reports? Like you go back to high school?
I think you would have to establish it some level of adolescence. Okay. So if they were in high school and then somebody was classified as whatever, just being nuts, let's just use that, right? And then they're 21. Let's say the age gets moved to 21. They're 21. They go buy a firearm, and they're like, "Hey, this is on the system." You've got to have a way for them to refute that.
Yeah, an appeals process, maybe, or something.
Right. There's got to be. Yeah. So do we say there's a reporting system, and within X period of days of purchase, you have to have a psychological evaluation? Because if we're not going to have waiting periods. The psychological world would love
that's
that.
A lot of, but that's going to spur a whole new industry of shrinks. Because that's gonna be a lot of people that need to get psychologically evaluated. And do you have to do it every time you purchase a firearm, or Is
Right.
it for, do you get a window of, okay, well, you did it 5 years ago, so you're good, but after 5 years, you got to get another screening? And I don't know.
And who
That
does
starts
the
getting a
screening?
little
Yeah.
bit, again, you start, who's in control? Who sets the parameters for what nullifies being allowed to own a
It
gun?
doesn't matter, because at the end of the day, like we all, each one of us have said, if Joe Schmo wants to get a gun, he's gonna get a fucking gun.
Right. So, but what I don't want to see happen is people who want to legally own firearms be prevented from it. Because most people who legally own firearms aren't, if they can't purchase it, they're not the type of people that are going to go illegally buy a firearm. They're just going to comply with the law. That's how most people do things. And then that's that many people who aren't allowed to be able to protect their home, themselves, their loved ones. And that's the issue I'm worried about. I'm not worried about that guy. That guy's going to buy a gun no matter what. He's going to go find a gun and use it. He's going to ignore every law there is. He's going to walk in every gun-free zone with that gun in his pocket. He does not care.
Right.
I'm worried about protecting the rights of the people who do care. You
Right.
know, that's what I'm concerned with.
So if you were to say, let's take the school shootings, because that's the biggest deal on the page right now. That's on the forefront right now. If you were to say, here's the top 1, 2, or 3 things in no order to help solve that problem, what would you say those would look like?
For my top 1, 2, 3, probably I don't see an issue. I have some issue with the age, only because I'm not 4, but that's probably have to be my number 3.
Yeah.
Like moving it down. The training would be like a number 2 for me. My number 1 was had to be deeper background checks with the mental.
Yeah.
And that's like it's just in that order. That's what we mean by.
And how would
background checks?
do you have any ideas on the mental, how to get that instituted?
Currently, at the moment, no. I mean, like I said, it's just you have to. It had to be a team up between people that's the psychologists and people that are knowledgeable about guns and how do those people think, and it's a study somewhere along the line that you can look into.
Do you think it would be fair to say, I'm going to put a bunch of them, this is all mental health.
Okay.
If you have been prescribed any one of these 10 medications, right, then that's a flag.
Right.
Okay, it's not denial, it's a flag. If you have been diagnosed with any of these X conditions, that's a flag. Again, not an automatic denial, but a flag. If this would be a delayed portion of the background check, okay, that you're going to allow the FBI or whoever's conducting those background checks, if it becomes more privatized, to go through your social media. If your social media shows that you're a part of or associated with radical groups and again, those are flags. So what those do maybe is spur required psychological evaluations. I think if that happens, the government's got to pay for it.
Oh, absolutely.
Like it can't be a, hey, you've got all these flags, so go drop 10 grand on psych evals if you want to own this firearm.
Yeah.
I think it's got to be dealt with by the government. The fees have to be the government. And then due process has to be in there too, man. Because if you just, I don't want there to be a $15 an hour therapist that's going to evaluate somebody that happens to be massively liberal that's going to be like, nope, down the way. So there's does that make sense?
Yeah.
So on the backside, there's got to be a way to do that. I mean, are all those steps fair?
The really interesting one you brought up was how to let the federal government review your social media, your social media postings. I think that's it's kind of scary, but then when you kind of think about it, like it's public anyway.
That's what they put.
It's public anyway.
Yeah.
It's public anyway, right? I mean, typically, even if you have a private account, usually you're allowing most people to follow you. I think that's actually pretty fair. That would, because it seems like some of these guys post a lot of stuff, social media showing some red flags.
I think all the platforms except YouTube own your content the second you post it.
Right.
They inherently acquire some level of ownership in anything you post, even if it's private. They still own it. Mm-hmm. So if that's true, I mean, would you be cool with that?
I don't. If me, I have no issue, but somebody other than me, I couldn't speak for them. I wouldn't have a problem turning over my social media accounts in order for me to acquire.
And that's the main reason I said the social media was because, one, I knew that they own it anyway once you post it. And the second one was is so many times there's something posted. You know, does that make sense? Now, not in the Vegas. So there are some that there's none.
Yeah.
But all the other ones is that take the San Bernardino one not too long ago. Both of them wound up having new social media relationships with extremist groups. Yeah. Bam, flag.
Yeah.
Call them in. If that pops up on the radar, because that stuff gets watched by the FBI and CIA and various, Homeland Security agencies.
It's also about who you follow and like you said, you can follow these types of groups that you don't even have to say anything or post anything on there, but it's just it pops up and you constantly watch that feed over and over. You can there's some type of way you can draw that information out, and it shows he spent almost 2 to 3 hours per day looking through this person's feed, and this feed talks about nothing about going against the government, going out and shooting or whatever type of crazy thing it talks about. There's different type of ways you can do that.
Yeah. So I think for you, the mental health one is the biggest.
Correct.
That you think will have the biggest impact, I think, on the deal. What about armed guards?
We got to just start doing something with soft targets, especially involving our children.
Yeah.
Like, these are children, right? And we don't have the resources to put some type of armed security, some option. Now, I know that the issue with you, so now you start putting armed security. Well, you got to talk about level of training of security.
Yeah.
You got to talk about who that you're putting in the school, because this is an individual. Security is typically much less trained and much, than a police officer. It's not the same thing.
I think.
What about the churches?
Well, because they're private institutions, so it's up to them. Because they can do it. Okay. Churches can do it.
Well, what a lot of churches do is they hire, and because I've worked some of these, they'll hire police officers as security for major events, or there's like a mosque I've worked. And
that situation, what was it? The guy that chased them down. That was in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah. And now the church has the right to do that. Okay. It's just that was something that they didn't do.
You're right. That's a private institution. Yeah. But that's something churches definitely could do, is hire police officers. They're there. Yeah. That's what we work side jobs all the time that. That's what they're there for. And you get a professional. I think the one in, do you remember, I think it was Garland, where they had the Muslim cartoon thing. Yeah. And I believe it was a police officer working as a side job, and ended up confronting them to begin with, and I took them both out. Yeah. Before they even got to the.
And I don't know if he was there and he wasn't off duty. I just don't know if he was working.
I think he was working. I'm almost positive he was working, and there was some type of security working, and confronted the guy, and the guy or guys immediately, and took him out.
Do you think?
To your point, that if you don't know that they're there.
I don't think
and that's kind of my thing, is that with the schools, churches we can't talk because it's private. That's up to them. But with schools, known, visible or not visible? What? An armed guard security.
I think if it's security, you gotta be visible. I think you need uniformed. Yeah. Well, I don't know. You start getting really weird.
Confrontation. I think you see, if you come in there for ill intent and you see that there's more than likely a chance that this person over here is armed. If you didn't come there, you come there to do bodily harm to somebody, and you're like, well, I wasn't intending on getting into a gunfight.
Right.
Yeah. That's gonna change. They're gonna somewhat change their perspective. But like I said, you got some folks out there that I came here to do harm regardless.
Yeah.
Well, and those people are going to do it anyway, whether there's someone there to confront them or not. They're maybe prepared for it, maybe they've trained for it, or mentally prepared themselves for it.
And what do you think about any kind of, again, without the definition of it, assault rifle ban?
No, it's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. First of all, what's an assault rifle? Like, we were sitting there joking about it, because what is an assault rifle? It's basically, when the left talks about it, it's a scary looking gun. And they don't understand.
You can have, and this is the reality, without getting into all the names again, because I know not everybody that's going to be watching is going to be privy to all the names of guns and firearms. So you can have a rifle that has its steel barrel, and it is made out of wood. That looks like a shotgun that can hold a 30-round magazine.
Yep.
And there's no flash suppressors. There's no fancy anything. It's wood and steel, and without the magazine in it, looks exactly like a shotgun.
Yep.
And it's not designed to fool anybody. That's just how it's built, right? And those actually, typically, the rounds of those are greater than that of the AR-15s and things of that nature. They're larger rounds, and there's 30.
Yep.
So do you want 30 rounds of a big bullet or 30 rounds of a little bullet? At that point, shit. Like, really, Oh, well, but it's got wood and steel, so that one's not an assault
Well,
rifle.
you're arguing semantics. And who wants a little piece of lead flying at him at
Right.
1,200 feet per second?
Thank you.
Anyway, a pistol will do that too.
Yeah.
And you can get high capacity magazines, 15, 16 rounds. So, I
Easy.
mean, it's, it's your semantics with the guns. I mean, assault weapon, I guess people who don't know, it sounds scary. It's, let's ban those. That'll solve the issue.
Do you think it's public awareness, public education on what the
it's
rifles are?
100% that it's lack of education of firearms and knowledge of what they do and whatever. When you listen, even like a lot of the politicians,
They don't
it
know.
hurts my ears. Like I'm like,
A lot of the education is coming from movies.
Right. Which is
Oh,
nonsense.
I seen this in a
Oh,
movie.
man.
This is
Yeah.
I seen him shoot multiple rounds, so it's like this is all I ever seen. So
Because that's when people think assault rifle, really anything bigger than a handgun
yeah,
that goes do-do-do-do-do-do.
yeah, yeah.
Legit.
Yeah.
That's what they think. Because if you ask a
and it don't actually go like that. It actually,
Yeah.
anything that's
Yeah.
if they're going to be able to walk in there and there's a group of 30 kids and they can, shoot X amount of bullets in such a short amount of time. Just, you know what I mean?
Well,
I'm not having to go.
What's funny is like, so you talk about the bump stocks,
Yeah.
and why I say such window dressing. If you are experienced in firearms, one of the least effective ways is to fire in a
Exactly.
full auto. That's the most least effective. You're gonna have a hard time hitting things.
Well, and I'll say this, and now going from my military activities during service, barring any large weapon that wasn't mounted, we didn't want it on full auto.
Right.
It's nonsense. You don't have the control of it. You don't have. I mean, you may try to do some bursts and shit, but it wasn't like why.
Yeah.
Unless
Yeah.
going back to like some jungle type scenarios and things of that nature. Yes, there are situations that full auto would be helpful in war and in battle. Most of the time, no. You click that thing right, it's on semi. You
Yep.
don't want it.
Yeah.
So it's that even the fact that let's ban fully auto. Well, okay, they're already banned, but let's pretend they're not. Anybody's going to go do a mass shooting, they're not going to let them put it on full.
They're not gonna
Because
hit
half
much.
the people are going to get hit.
I
you
tell you
know?
what was funny. I don't remember which senator it was. I think probably Pelosi or Feinstein. They talked about what if this. I think it was Las Vegas. They were talking about what if they had suppressors on their farms? It would have been worse. It would have been a lot less because you can only fire a couple rounds at a time, and a suppressor for it overheats.
Right.
But it shows the lack of knowledge. It's like you don't understand. You're supposed to legislate laws regarding this, and you don't even understand how guns operate in any fashion. So yeah, I agree with you. So I agree with you. It's the lack of education on a lot of.
How do you think? Let's use NRA. Colin Noir with the NRA, one of their spokes or I don't know if he's commentator or spokesperson, whatever he's classified as with them. He's good because he's a young black attorney in Texas, right? So that helps out a lot. But do you think using people like him to try to get out? Like, how do you get the education and this information, which is important, to the liberal that has it shut off, saying no more deaths, no more guns, I'm sick of it?
you gotta send it straight to where they're getting their news feed from. You gotta put it on Fox News, or somebody has to be educated to go in there and say this is what's going on. It has to be force fed, actually. It's no just baby spooning in it with them guys. It's nothing of that sort. It just has to be force fed.
So how do you? I think the politicians would be helpful.
Yeah.
So how do you get a politician who looks at the only way they're going to get reelected or elected is to be against, a major component is to be against the Second Amendment? How do you get them to? Does that make sense? Because they drive a lot of it.
Yeah.
And we know some of the key politicians at the top that are on the Democratic side that will pander to their voters base, to their voting base, to drive this agenda that the Second Amendment's hell. We need all guns gone, and right.
Yeah.
You know? And so that's a real, because I think that's part of the main solution in this is that you have to educate both sides as fully as possible. And
I don't
so-
think our politicians are going to do it though.
It's probably not going to be a politician. It's more likely it's going to have to be some of your hot celebrities that's out right now. That's somebody that you can talk to.
Well, here's what's going to happen, because if you're been watching the media lately, the NRA is target number one for the left right now.
Yes.
They are, every other word is the NRA is doing this. The NRA is responsible. The NRA is responsible. It's going to be up to the NRA to come up with a very good public relations campaign to educate people on firearms, to educate people on what their purpose is and
They've
what
got
they're
it.
trying to achieve.
It's all
'Cause
there.
they don't do it right now very well.
They spend a lot of money on the outreach and the advertising for it.
I think
and
they're
the
speaking
material.
to they're speaking to people who already agree with them. They're not
Yeah.
trying to educate the general populace on firearms and their purpose.
See,
They
I
don't. I don't
I'm
think.
gonna say I partially disagree because I'm gonna take Colin Noir. He's done multiple years of multiple series where he goes out and has discussions with people and talks about it and has one-on-ones with people who are massively against firearms. And he's talked to people from Australia doing it and from Britain. And I mean, he's really gone out and he's, like I said, he's well-spoken. He listens. There's no bantering and yelling and cursing at each other and that kind of stuff. I mean, they're good discussions.
Right.
And he has his reviews of all different firearms and he talks about all that. I mean, like there's more than just him. I'm just using him because he's right on the forefront. He is probably the best person right now to be out doing those things, and a person from the left is not going to watch it.
Oh no, because I've seen people watch it like or comment on some of the videos, you know, on Facebook and stuff, and it is the very typical response. I don't even think they watched it. They watched like 10 seconds of it, and they're like, "Well, blah, blah, blah," you know.
Yeah.
Yeah. You have to find somebody that they already respect and admire
To turn on him.
I'm
serious, right?
You're right.
Somebody that, like, let's pretend it's like Will Smith. Everybody loves Will Smith,
Yeah.
right? And you wouldn't expect him to be talking about guns.
Yeah.
So he's like, "Hey guys, everybody, I need your attention. Let me just explain to you. Here's the difference. I'm not either way. I just want you to. Do you see what I'm saying? I think that's how
somebody
it's
has to
gonna
be able to
go,
deliver the message that they
Yeah.
actually sit down and listen to.
but- Oh, okay. Well,
Will Smith, Beyonce, something, something.
I think you're barking at the wrong tree.
Yeah.
There. But I do think that's why I kind of feel like it's going to have to come from pro Second Amendment groups like the NRA and some of the others. They gotta find a way to reach out to young people, to all people really, but really focus on young people and educate them on what the history is, what the purpose is, what firearms are, and they got to find out a way to connect. That's the key. Because like you say, they're not connecting because they're clicking on it for 2 seconds and they hear 3 words that don't agree with their mentality. And I'm not wasting my time, right? They're not willing to open their minds. So, let me try to educate myself on what I'm against before I'm against it. You're not going to get a lot of that.
What about gun education at a neighborhood or small community level?
Well, there used to be gun education in school.
No, I know.
At home.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
I just
Yeah,
wasn't
you're
going
right.
there. There
You're
was,
right.
yeah. Up until early 80s, early mid 80s?
I'm not sure, but it was around that area.
Right around there. I could be
Yeah.
wrong, but yeah, I just
No,
wasn't
you're right.
going there yet. So, I mean, do you think we bring that back and like here in this neighborhood, you're like, hey, once a quarter, we're going to have a little gun education, a little firearm education.
I don't know. I think it could be a good thing. The issue is reaching out, connecting with people who don't want to be educated. We've got to find a way. That's the key because I think it's lack of education. When you hear them talk, it's very obvious. They don't have an understanding of what firearms are, what they do.
My last part with this is I'm gonna do a plug of a poll that was released this morning from 16-year-olds to 24-year-olds, right? That age demographic, men or boys and girls and men and women, right? Because some are teenagers. About 65% want, desire, and would defend the right to own firearms.
That's a good.
And which was shocking to everyone. I was watching it on a conservative outlet, and it was shocking to everyone on that conservative outlet that those kids are there's a higher percentage of that age group than any other age group that it feels that way.
That makes me feel a little better.
Yeah.
I'll be honest with you. I would be shocked. I'm shocked by it too.
So that's
I think it's more driven based off the fact of how much violence it is. In the world right now, and the only thing that's going to protect you is a gun.
Yeah,
they want it.
And they feel like they need to protect themselves or protect their parents or anybody else like that. They probably can't protect themselves at this time.
Well, I can tell you as a police officer, we tell people in situations where they need protection, if you feel comfortable with the firearm, I recommend it. Police are reactionary. We're getting here after things have happened, and it takes things happen very fast. And even at the best response times, we're not getting there fast enough. I'm just promise you, it's just the way the system's set up. So you've got your protection starts with you, and then we're there to augment and help if we can get there. You know.
So Anthony, you got any closing statements?
Keeping my guns.
All 10 of them.
Just closing statements. Just educate yourselves about the guns. Do the right things by them. If you're gonna do anything, get out and train. And it's fun. It's like I said, make sure if you got kids coming up around them, make sure they're around them as well. Like I said, I have 4 kids, and all of them have shot. Besides my 2-year-old daughter, and all of them have shot at least one of my guns, and they're not afraid of them. They understand them that they're there for protection. They're there for recreation use, and it's just a hobby that I have, and they're not afraid of them, and I'm not going to raise them to be afraid of them.
Yeah, Jason.
Word. What he said. That's
Yeah.
what. Yeah, education and you know, as far as self-defense goes and stuff, I just defend yourself, like I said, because you know, police and everybody, the state's reactionary. You know, the defense relies on you, so do what you gotta do.
And I mean, I like to say that I think it's unrealistic to think the Second Amendment's going away. I am massively sympathetic to those that have lost people in mass shootings and firearm deaths, and just as much as stabbings and everything else. It's horrible, and you don't have control, and I get that. And I know they're looking for ways to solve this problem. And I think,
We all are.
yeah, we all.
Yeah.
I mean, nobody wants kids to be shot. I mean, let's be real. But in knowing that, we have to face the reality that the guns aren't going away. And even if some go away, they're not all going away. So how do we protect our children and ourselves with that understanding and that reality? And I think we touched on a few of those today. And education, I think, is key. And I think just being realistic. Emotional is cool, and I get the emotion. We've got to put that to the side. And the time to make legislation is not right after an incident. I think that's important to put out there. Awesome. I appreciate you guys doing this, man.
Thank you.
No,
A lot of fun.
Thank
for
you.
having us.
You didn't sweat near as much as I thought you were going to. Though.
Hey,
I was like,
in his
oh, I did a
defense,
good
it is a
answer.
little bit warm.
Yeah, I know.
It's a little warm.
I was like, why is my right arm sweating? My left arm good, man. I don't know what that. No, but thanks. Thank you, Jason. Yeah, I appreciate it, guys. Yes, so thank you guys for watching. Feel free to keep messaging me. We'll keep this conversation going. Awesome. Thank you, guys.